My name is Julie D. Young. I manage Tacoma Power's Shared Services Asset Investment Team. This webinar is based on a talk I gave at the IAM North American Conference last year, which was called Painting the Picture, Visual Asset Strategies for Better Decision Making. And hopefully you can see me, Ursula. Is the camera working now?
I can see you now, yes.
Perfect, thank you. The objective of today's webinar is a shared understanding of the benefits of visual asset management strategies. I'll talk about why we need these types of strategies and how they fit, the role they play in the bigger asset management picture. I'll introduce the concept in developing these documents, share some of the benefits around producing them, and then provide some examples pulled directly from one of our asset class strategies to show some examples of how the visualizations within them can help drive better asset decision making. Before I dive in further, a brief introduction to Tacoma Power. We are a municipal utility established in 1893, currently operating with about 850 employees. We are the fourth largest public power utility in Washington state, serving over 380,000 residents. Our portfolio consists mainly of hydroelectric power, with only about 10% drawn from other sources, including wind and solar. And of our hydroelectric power, about 40% comes from our own generation. We operate 4 hydro projects along rivers in Western Washington, and you can see a photo of one of our beautiful dams there on the right. So why do we need visual asset management strategies? Like most of you working in utilities, we're responsible for managing a complex infrastructure. Much of our equipment is expensive, entails long lead times to replace, and relies on deep expertise to maintain properly. So clearly we need good asset strategies to ensure we're caring for our assets in the best possible way for our ratepayers. And at Tacoma Power, we did have some asset strategies, and some of them were written very well. There was just one problem: no one was using them to make better decisions about work. And why not? Well, one problem was fairly obvious. These were comprehensive Word documents describing everything we owned in a particular asset class, for example, and documenting the maintenance and capital replacement spending associated, and a wide variety of other information about parts and processes. They were pages and pages long, and to our subject matter experts and decision makers, they resembled this wall of text, making them difficult to review, a hassle to have approved by senior leadership, and hard to reference later. So basically, they were ensured a lifetime on a shelf or somewhere on a dark corner of SharePoint. So when we set out to improve these strategies, we wanted to flip that script. How could we take something that was full of words but provided little value and provide great value using very few words? First, though, we needed to make sure we truly understood the purpose of these strategies and the role we needed them to play in the bigger asset management picture. So we went back to the core piece of our asset management program, our vision. We knew our goal was reliable long-term asset planning and investments backed by data and analysis. And we knew that getting there meant developing a series of optimal upgrade and replacement strategies for each piece of our infrastructure. We even knew the information that we needed to include to support good decision-making around investment planning, those categories that you see up there on the screen. One key piece that had been missing, though, was the ability to present all of that information in a way that allowed for collective decision-making. We needed to find a way to get the required asset information and analysis into the hands of our subject matter experts in a way that they could quickly understand and evaluate, then bring them together to make good collective decisions based on shared understandings. That's why the icon you see there at the right, the representation for those optimal upgrade and O&M strategies, doesn't show a document or a dashboard. It's a representation of the people who know best how to care for our equipment, getting into a room together to review the health and projected future of assets in an accessible way, and to make real changes to work processes based on that collaboration. Of course, given how large and complicated our system is, it would be impractical to gather all of the required data and information for the entirety of the infrastructure together in one place then bring every expert around every piece of equipment into the room at the same time. So we broke up the infrastructure into 10 reasonable chunks so that we could write site, system, and asset class strategies that made sense for each piece and review them with the people who knew the most about that particular part of the overall system, effectively covering the entire infrastructure. We had two main goals in mind for these strategies, two main roles we wanted them to play in our overall system. The first is outlined here. We wanted each strategy to provide both long and short-term planning for relevant equipment, aiming for work planning and projections out at least one replacement cycle. For short-term planning, we wanted to do a deep dive on the upcoming budget so that we were able to identify with great clarity and review with our experts exactly what needed to be done in the next biennium. And to help with engagement and buy-in, we told our experts that in exchange for doing this deep dive on planning, we would document their approved plans in the draft 10-year capital improvement plan and also write their business cases for them so that when it came time to produce those documents, they didn't have to reproduce their work. Just pull those drafts from a SharePoint repository, make minor updates as needed, and submit to our budget team. Once we documented the long-term plans for each piece of the infrastructure in our strategies, we now have a long-term picture of all of the projected infrastructure work that had been proposed and approved. We can move on to prioritizing our entire portfolio using the value framework that allows us to take things into consideration like resource and financial constraints, the ability to combine work to reduce the number of outages, and the highest priorities to our organization as identified by our senior leaders. Things like safety, employee and customer experience, and reliability. The resulting scenarios for prioritized work over the next 10 years are what we are then able to capture in our asset management plan.